Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. We get to talk farming. Farming in the Rogue Valley, Central Point, and the farmer is Doreen. Welcome to Journeys and Journals.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Yes.
You are going to tell us about this guy.
Well, that is my granddad, William Bonert, and he started farming in the Rogue Valley, actually, first time late 1800s, then moved to Nebraska with his family, and then came back in 1908.
Now, he had other members of his family that came?
No, well, in a way, yes. He had a sister and brother-in-law who had a bakery in New York. And what they would do is pay the passage for one of the siblings to come across. The sibling would work in the bakery for a year to pay for their passage, and then the sibling could go wherever. And my granddad opted to come west.
And that's where you and I have our roots, because
Yes.
my husband's grandma, Heisenroder, who's really
Was a Bonert.
Maria Bonert,
Right. My
Earned-
granddad's sister.
earned her way by working in that bakery. And the beer truck man stopped to get some good bakery goods, and she married him. So
Okay.
that's our family connections.
Yes.
And then when these Bonerts, and now how many of them settled in the Rogue Valley?
There were 3 brothers that stayed there and farmed, and then 2 sisters who married farmers and stayed there and farmed. One brother had asthma very, very badly, moved to Arizona, but passed away when he was 22. And so that part of the family was no longer.
And you're talking what family names?
Bonert, the names? Well, there
The
was
Dunns.
the Dunns.
Now that's yours.
That was my Aunt Emma, one of the sisters, and my Aunt Louise was von der Helen. And then, of course, the 3 brothers that were farming there were Bonerts. They were Arnold and John, my dad, and Otto, another uncle.
So there's quite a family here.
Yes.
And they chose Southern Oregon. Actually, those beautiful, beautiful fields right under Table Rock.
Kind of, right along I-5.
Before there was an I-5.
Before there was an I-5, right.
When they cut I-5 through your fields, what did they find?
They went down 14 feet, and it was still topsoil. And sometimes they would find some Indian artifacts. There were places where channels cut through because the creeks kind of meandered through that area, and I'm assuming it was beaver dams and so forth that built the kind of soil that we have.
Because your soil is...
It's loamy for the most part. It's granity on part of it. It's, in a way, a little bit difficult to farm because the old stream beds meandered, and so you have spots that are different in the same field.
Now, you do find some arrowheads.
Yes.
Because?
Because it was close to Bear Creek, where the Takelma Indians, the Rogue Indians, camped, I assume. We find places where they chipped arrowheads. The unfortunate thing is that over the years, the equipment as it goes through the field is very hard on arrowheads.
Oh, yeah.
But we also used to find the stone bowls, and they would have grinders because of the oak trees that were there, and one of the main foods that they used was acorn. And of course they ground up the acorns in these stone bowls. We used to have a bunch of them around the yard, and they kind of walked off, so I don't have.
Wouldn't it be
stone
nice
bowls.
if someone who had walked off with them were to see this and say, I will repay you
Back, yeah.
with dividends. Now, we talked before about this little cabin that was really a stage stop.
Yes, the stage stop was there, and the main road went through the farm at that point. It did not remain there because, of course, the old Highway 99 went in a different spot, and the old stage road had to be the road that they used in the winter, because down there on the valley floor where we are, I'm sure the mud would have been up to the horses' ears.
Up to the horse's ears. But let's shift gears just a little bit, because I want to talk county fair. If there's one thing I love, it's talking about kids and what's achieved. When did you start putting things in the county fair? You personally?
Well, me personally, because I was 9 and joined 4-H. And some of the things that we had livestock, so one of the first things I did with 4-H was to have cattle. My dad was raising purebred cattle, and he gave me my first cow. Her name was Bonnie, and
Bonnie? Bossy Bonnie?
Yeah.
Now, is this Bonnie?
That's Bonnie, yes.
And you're how old? You just look...
I was 10 in that picture. And then, of course, the county fair in Jackson County was a big deal. The young people that are shown there, we didn't have dairy cattle that I showed, but the people that are there, one of them was killed in an automobile accident along the way. One of them became a homemaker. One of them was an administrative nurse, and one of them is a rancher's wife in Eastern Oregon, which, they all, other than the one, grew up to be very productive citizens.
Oh, car wrecks, that touches my heart.
Yeah.
So you have followed these young women there.
Right.
Jane and Sue and...
Jan and Alberta and Linda.
Because their mom might be watching right now and say, that's my girl.
That's their girl, yeah.
Well, then who's this?
Well, that's me later on, still showing steers. Had the good fortune to have a champion steer that particular year, and the money from the sales of my market animals put me through college.
Is that possible?
Well, it was then. College didn't cost nearly as much.
Yeah, but neither did beef.
That's true, and we didn't get nearly as much for them then as we did, but I was in 4-H for 10 years, and so I sold quite a few animals over the years. And then my cow had babies, and one of them that she had was a bull that I took to a bull sale in Red Bluff, and I got $1,100 for him, which was a nice sum of money then.
Oh, yes. Well, I remember Tracy's Steakhouse used to have, right after County Fair, you could go in and have prize, blue ribbon, beef as the treat of the season.
Yeah.
Is this where this fancy one comes from?
Well, yeah. This one came from Jackson County, and it was a sheep one, but the beef one would have looked just like it. And this was for a pen of 5 animals. And they would have a club, each club would compete, and they would bring their 5 best animals and compete against the other clubs. But the thing that intrigued me about it was how fancy the old ribbons were.
1959, then we go to 19 and, woo.
Is that older?
No, can't see a date.
Oh, yeah, well, it's 19, I thought there was a
59.
Okay, 59.
And then we get over to, hey, it's getting littler.
Yeah.
But the animals weren't getting smaller, were they?
No, the animals were getting larger.
Now, how do you happen to have a Josephine County ribbon right here?
Well, because my husband and I showed cattle, And one of the fairs that we used to come to was Josephine County, because we thought that Josephine County had the best county fair of any in the area.
Well, thank
and we
you.
loved to come to it.
Well, now, you've also shown at the state fair
Yes.
and walked away with,
Well, we did okay.
yeah, probably first grand champagne,
Yeah, well.
et cetera, et cetera.
We did okay.
You sure,
Yes.
Doreen, why now is this into the second, well, no, third?
Third.
No, fourth generation?
Well, third generation.
You sent me off to meet a cousin of yours, and those boys are living in the city of Medford,
Yes.
raising prize.
They did rabbits and did very well with their rabbits. They have since acquired some property so that they can have steers and sheep and
Earn their
whatever.
way through college too?
Probably.
What's
or
the
at least
family
it will
name?
help. Their name is Gladman.
And they bake bread, they, this, I was so impressed. Now, not only were your granddaughters working in the store this season, right? They take
Right.
their vacation time?
Yes. Yes, they come visit. Well, two of the grandkids live on the farm, and so they don't have much choice. They probably get way more hours than they'd like, but we do pay them so that they're earning money that way too.
And what we're talking about, they're working in a fruit stand, which has expanded and expanded from this tiny little store. No, this would have been the first.
Well, the one that we had, yes, it was beside, we used that little cabin to store our fresh veggies in, but we had a different little building that we sold out of. But it is still there, but we don't sell out of it now. We've had to expand and get bigger.
Who in the world? You're talking big animals.
Well, this was when we were still raising cattle, purebred Herefords, and that is a granddaughter. She was one of those kids who had no fear, and the bull was quite intrigued with her. And the next picture that I went to snap, she was on top of the fence and scared me to death, but she had no fear.
Grandmother's daughter, like grandma. What would your dad and grandfather be saying if you could just hear them through the century, right?
Well, I don't know exactly what my granddad would have said because I really never got to know him. I was 5 when he died, and he was scary to me. He had a full head of white hair and fierce eyes, I thought. So I was a little nervous around him. But my dad would be very pleased. He was very supportive of 4-H. He was a longtime 4-H leader, and my mom was too. And would have been delighted to see his grandchildren go on doing 4-H and FFA. He would be very pleased to see what the farm is doing because one of his wishes was that the farm continue. And my granddad's farm now has houses on it, and the uncle's farms that were around there either have houses on them or almost do. And ours is the one that's left.
And we sure appreciate that. Now, this picture, is that the early one?
That's the old log cabin that was part of the stage stop. And we know that the thing is way over 100 years old, but we don't know exactly when it was built.
And that, right in front of that is the 7 oaks and the tree that had the ring for the horse?
Right, that tie ring was built, or it had grown into the tree. And when the tree came down and we were cutting it up, it appeared. So
it certainly wouldn't burn. It's already
no,
been fired.
no.
What do we have here?
Oh gosh, that's a son-in-law and granddaughter, and they were dancing, and it was, I've tried and tried to catch the spirit of that because it was the most delightful picture in my head. And I don't ever feel like I've caught it, but it was such a happy time.
Now, is this one of the little girls we'll find selling things?
Yes, that's Taylor, and she's 16 now. And yes, she's one of the ones that would wait on you in the store.
Now, Central Point has a real history. And what is this about? Because there's nothing like it in any place else in the valley.
Not around here, no. That's a grain elevator. And they were used to store the grain. And of course, they use gravity to move it a lot of times. They have to use power to get the grain up in the elevator, but then they can use gravity to get it down when they're mixing and rolling, steaming, whatever they do to it as they're going to make it into feed.
So this is primarily for animal food.
Animal feed, yes. Mm-hmm.
And you can still see this, but not working.
Well, yes, that one, the Grange Co-op one in Central Point is very active.
Oh.
In fact, they've done some upgrades, doesn't show on the outside, but they've done some upgrades, and it's making more feed than it ever did.
Oh, can't you see if I can get a tour of that place?
They might.
How I remember going 99. We'd go from Grants Pass over to Medford, because that's the only orthodontist, was Dr. Goodrich, I think his name was, in Medford.
Yes.
And I had terrible teeth. And
would you believe he was my orthodontist also?
he was right out of World War II, and he had a real attitude.
Yes, he did.
He expected us to sit there quietly while he...
Oh. Yeah.
Let's look at our nice teeth. Yeah, and he was in the building that is now history, right on the corner of Main and Central.
Right, yes.
I wonder why they ever took that building down. It was quite a substantial quarter of a block. Now it's a little park.
Well, they've wanted to new and improve the place, I guess.
Maybe.
But I don't know.
Medford is the changing face of Medford.
Right.
You've brought some pictures here that I just love.
Well, I led 4-H clubs for 40 years. And
40 years.
I started pretty young. And one of the clubs, I did foods clubs, but I also did a sheep club. And that is when we were doing the Pear Blossom Parade in Medford. And
this is a float?
That's a float that we had in the Pear Blossom Parade. And we won, by the way, too.
Oh, let's put the ribbon back on
yeah,
there.
Yes,
you go. Yes.
We built a village, a pear village. So all the buildings looked like pears, sort of. We built it out of cardboard, and it was quite a project.
Now, you're not retired yet, because I saw you at another fair judging baked goods.
That's right. I do judge now.
You have your, what do they call it?
My
when
qualifications. Yeah.
You got the badge that I can be a judge
That
now?
I can be a judge, yes. Yeah, I quit leading a club actively quite a few years ago because it just was taking a lot of time. And
away from the fruit stand, I understand.
Yeah, I am the farm, and yes. And
after 40 years, I think we can all understand that.
And so then I started judging, and I judge in some of the local fairs around. I judge at State Fair. I've judged at several Northern California ones. Kind of fun. I like to do it.
Well, we like to have you do it. And this whole bunch of school buses tells me about your involvement in kids.
Yes, for years, and actually it was 27 years, we had school kids come to the farm, and I started it as a community service project for my 4-H club. We didn't want to raise money for cancer or heart or whatever. We wanted to do something more substantial. And so the first year or two that we did it, we had handicapped kids, and that was all. And I was amazed at what my 4-H kids who were not handicapped got out of it. They were so impressed that they were able to help these kids, and it was such a good thing for them that we just kept on going. And then it got too big for the 4-H club, and so the FFA stepped in, and they helped.
This is 5 school buses.
We had...
Or is that 6?
It's, yeah, probably. We had about, the last 2 years we did it, we had about 8,000 kids come through in the 3 days that we did it. So it was pretty intense, but it was wonderful.
That makes me so proud. So very proud, because you're giving a chance for so many to see.
Well, it was neat, and the thank you poster over there, I don't know if the audience can see it, but there's a montage of what the kids saw there, and then we got thank you things like that, and the pictures that the kids drew on those are just priceless. I love them.
Unto the 3rd generation or 4th, who's this kid?
Well, that's one of my granddaughters. She actually lives up in Washington, comes down in the summer and works on the farm, but up there, this is her 4-H project, and she was in a horse club, so she is showing her horse.
Well, am I down to the last of the pictures here?
You're getting there.
This is what?
That is my grandson, and he was showing cattle. He has gone a long ways toward putting himself through college with his market animals also. And then he went from 4-H into FFA, and he's working in the stand, which he did every summer. He's stocking there, and he started out like most of the kids that we train. They polished peppers.
Oh.
That was the first thing you had to do, was wipe all the peppers so they were clean and shiny. Well, of course, he graduated from polishing peppers to where he was actually putting out produce and discerning which was good enough to go out and which needed to go back in the back.
And when it goes back in the back, does it go back to the animals or to the ground?
Some of both, and also we donate a lot of it.
Oh.
If it's just ugly, but still very good or very edible, then we donate it to Access, or there's a couple of church groups. There's one in Gold Hill that comes and picks it up.
It was just not as pretty as the...
Yeah.
Oh, folks, I wish you could smell this. This is just one of those, did this a blue ribbon recipe?
Well, actually, I was doing pumpkin tests, and I've got to keep up with everything, partly because of the stand, and partly because when I'm judging, I need to be aware of all the new things that are going on. But I was doing pumpkin tests to see which pumpkins made the best pie, bread, bars, and what have you. And to me, hands down, the Cinderella pumpkin, which is this flat, bright colored one, was the one that was the good one.
Well, this looks fantastic. Maybe we should run this in the newsletter because lots of people might want to see this prize-winning pumpkin squares by Doreen. I'll tell you, it's mighty tasty.
Well, you can use, it needs to be cooked pumpkin, but you can use canned or pumpkin that you grow or buy or whatever.
Or jack-o'-lanterns?
Or well, you could. Jack-o'-lanterns are pretty stringy, and the flavor is okay, but they are pretty stringy, and you might want to puree them.
I understand Hubbard squash is real good too.
Yes.
Look at what you got over there. We need to know about this.
Well, one of the things when I was in 4-H, what I did clothing, and actually didn't really like to sew, but my mother thought that I should learn how, and those were the days where you had to make the inside of the garment look as good as the outside.
Ooh.
So you cannot find my hem stitches, can you?
No, I can't.
Now, I don't do that anymore, but at that point,
Well, what
I
are
had
you
to-
sewing nowadays?
well, pajamas mostly.
How
now.
did you get in the business of pajamas?
Oh gosh, when Don and I were early matrimony and first married, have no money, have kids, and so the Christmas present to our kids every year was new winter pajamas, which I made. They got something from Santa Claus, but then the other present they got was pajamas. And so when my kids had kids, they thought that I should still make pajamas for the grandkids. So I'm still making pajamas.
How many pair of pajamas this year?
5.
And at pumpkin time, they are all cut out and ready to go. What can I do with this?
Well, it's a hay hook, and it's one of the ones that we found around the old cabin. So somebody was hauling hay or loading hay in a wagon or something, kind of a wicked beast, and so it had to be pretty sharp. Tin cup found around the old cabin or around the store, I don't know, is something that kind of appeared, and
Just a whole lot of history on your place. And the Indian corn?
Indian corn. Well, the reason that I brought it along was because with the pumpkins, they called it the Three Sisters, but the three things that the Indians used were pumpkins, beans, and corn. And
You showed them all.
so we still do the Indian corn because it's very decorative.
Thank you so much for being my guest. We could just go on all day. Thanks for tuning in to Journeys and Journals and our trip to the farm this time, and 4-H and FFA. Thanks so much, Doreen.
You're very welcome.